The morning was cold, and the city streets were quiet except for the occasional sound of footsteps or the soft rolling of a cart. The twins moved carefully between the shadows, their small hands holding each other's tightly. They were used to the emptiness of early mornings, the way the city seemed unaware of those who had nothing. Their clothes were thin and worn, barely enough to protect them from the chill, but they had each other, and that was what kept them moving. Their stomachs were empty, and the ache reminded them that another long day had begun. They had been living on the streets for as long as they could remember. Food came in pieces, sometimes from kind strangers, sometimes from the leftovers of cafes or markets. They had learned quickly how to spot those who might give a coin or a crumb, and how to avoid those who would scowl or push them away. They had learned the rhythm of survival, and every day was a careful dance between hope and despair. But what made them different from many others in their situation was their bond. Being twins meant they never felt completely alone. When one felt fear, the other shared it. When one found courage, the other found it too. They understood each other in a way that no one else could. Even in their difficult life, they had small moments of joy. They would sit on a quiet corner and watch the pigeons, or laugh softly at some small thing they found in the trash, like a crumpled piece of paper with a drawing. They shared stories they imagined about people walking past, guessing at their lives, or inventing their own little adventures in their minds. The city was a tough place, but in their own imagination, it was full of magic and possibilities. One thing had always fascinated them above everything else. In one square, tucked behind the noise of the city, there was a cafe with a small piano placed near the entrance. Every day, people would come and sit, some drinking coffee, some chatting, some watching a musician play. The twins had never played a piano themselves, but they were drawn to it. They would sit across the street, peering through the glass, listening to the music, and imagining what it would feel like to press those keys and make sounds flow from them. Sometimes they hummed along quietly to the notes, pretending that they were part of the melody. The piano became a symbol of something beautiful in their world, something they wanted but had no way to reach. That morning, they had only a small piece of bread left from the day before. It wasn't enough for two people to feel full, and it certainly wouldn't last the day. As they moved through the streets, they whispered about the piano, about how it would feel to touch it. They dreamed out loud, as they always did, though usually only in whispers so no one would hear. "What if we could play even just for a little while?" one of them said. "Maybe someone would give us food if we did," the other replied. They laughed softly at the idea, but it was a serious thought. They needed bread, and they knew the world was often cruel to those who asked for it openly. The day began to pick up. The streets filled with people, some in a rush to get to work, some lingering to enjoy the early sunlight. The twins moved carefully, stepping aside for hurried feet, dodging carts, and keeping their eyes on the prize, the cafe. They felt a mix of excitement and fear. The thought of approaching the piano made their stomachs flutter in a way that was different from hunger. It was nervous energy, the kind that comes when something important is about to happen. They reached the cafe and hesitated. The piano gleamed in the sunlight, its polished surface reflecting the world around it. People were seated nearby, talking and laughing, not noticing the small pair standing shyly at the edge of the square. The twins looked at each other and then back at the piano. Neither spoke for a moment. They had never asked for anything directly before, especially not in front of strangers who might laugh or push them away. But the hunger in their bellies and the longing in their hearts gave them courage. With a deep breath, one of the twins stepped forward and spoke, the words small but clear. "Excuse us, sir." The voice trembled slightly. "Could we play the piano? If we could have some bread?" For a moment there was silence. Then, a ripple of laughter spread across the cafe. People looked at the twins as if they were making a joke, amused by the small, audacious request. The twins felt their cheeks burn. The laughter stung, but they didn't step back. They held their ground, clinging to the hope that maybe, just maybe, someone would see the truth in their eyes, the hunger, the longing, the honesty of the request. Despite the laughter, they edged closer to the piano. Their hands hovered above the keys, uncertain but determined. They had never had lessons, never been taught, and yet they felt a strange connection to the instrument. It was as if the piano recognized them, welcomed them to touch it. They pressed a key, then another, and slowly, a simple melody began to emerge. It was imperfect, shaky, but it carried something raw and real, something that came from deep inside, from a place where hope and struggle met. The crowd's laughter began to fade, replaced by curiosity. People leaned forward, watching the small pair who dared to play. Their fingers moved with growing confidence, coaxing out notes that surprised even themselves. The music was not polished or professional, but it was filled with feeling, with the story of two children who had lived too much in too few years. The twins felt a spark of something they had almost forgotten. Pride, joy, the kind that comes from doing something that matters, even if it is just for a moment. Their stomachs still ached, their bodies still ached, but in that instant they were not beggars. They were musicians, artists, children with a gift that no one could take away. They glanced at each other, a silent promise passing between them. No matter what happened, they would keep going. They would keep playing, keep dreaming, keep believing. As the last note lingered in the air, the twins stepped back, unsure what would happen next. The laughter had vanished, replaced by quiet murmurs and surprised looks. Some people reached for their wallets, some just stared, unable to comprehend the unexpected beauty that had come from such unlikely hands. The twins looked at the small piece of bread they had brought, their hearts still pounding, and felt a flicker of hope. Maybe today things could be different. Maybe this small act of courage would change something, even if just a little. They left the cafe that morning with more than just bread in mind. They carried a sense of possibility, a feeling that the world, despite its harshness, could sometimes surprise you with moments of kindness and recognition. The city seemed a little brighter, the day a little less heavy. And for the twins, that small piano and those few notes played would linger in their hearts forever. A reminder that even in struggle, beauty could be found, and even in laughter, respect could be earned. The city streets were brighter that morning, with sunlight spilling across the pavement, catching the dust in the air and making it sparkle like tiny stars. The twins walked carefully, their fingers intertwined, moving toward the cafe once again. The memory of their first attempt at the piano still lingered in their minds. It was a strange feeling, a mix of pride and nervousness, the kind that comes when you have done something daring, something that surprises even yourself. They had bread, enough for now, but their hearts were hungry for more than food. They longed to play again, to share their music with the world, and maybe, just maybe, to find someone who believed in them. As they approached the cafe, the usual crowd was starting to gather. People were sipping coffee, reading newspapers, chatting with friends. The twins felt a mixture of excitement and fear. Would they be laughed at again? Would someone shout at them to leave? They paused at the edge of the square, hesitating for a moment. But the memory of the music they had made before, of the notes that had seemed to carry their story into the air, gave them courage. They took a deep breath and stepped forward, small but determined. This time they didn't speak at first. They simply moved toward the piano, their eyes fixed on the keys. Their fingers hovered for a moment, unsure, then pressed down. The sound was soft, a little uncertain, but it was theirs. Slowly they began to play, the melody growing as they gained confidence. People stopped talking, some turning their heads to watch. There was curiosity in the air, and that curiosity slowly turned into something else. Amazement. A few children nearby paused in their play, watching the twins with wide eyes. Even adults who had been too busy to notice the world around them now found themselves drawn to the small pair and the music they created. There was something pure in the way the twins played, a rawness that could not be taught or copied. It was not about perfection. It was about emotion, about telling a story without words. The twins did not care about applause or approval. They played because it made them feel alive, because it gave them a voice in a world that often ignored them. As the melody continued, a man sitting at a nearby table stood up. He was older, with kind eyes and a gentle smile. He watched quietly, holding a small notebook in his hand. He was a musician himself, someone who understood the beauty and effort in music. He noticed the way the twins moved their hands, the care with which they touched the keys, and he felt a deep respect for them. He didn't interrupt, didn't speak, but he scribbled notes in his book, capturing the moment, the feeling, the story that the twins were telling through music. The twins felt the attention, but they did not stop. They did not even look around much, except to glance at each other with a silent reassurance. Every note they played carried a memory, a feeling, a dream. The city noises faded away for them, leaving only the piano and the music. It was as if they had created a small world, one that belonged entirely to them, and for the first time, they felt a sense of belonging in a place that had never welcomed them before. People began to approach slowly. Some offered coins, others small pieces of bread or fruit. The twins accepted what was offered with quiet gratitude, their eyes shining, but they did not stop playing. Their music drew more attention, more kindness, more curiosity. It was a simple exchange. Music for food, effort for compassion. And yet, it was more than that. It was a bridge between two worlds, the harsh reality of life on the streets and the warmth and beauty of human connection. A woman sitting nearby watched with tears in her eyes. She had seen many children struggle, many faces lost in the crowd, but there was something about these twins that moved her deeply. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small notebook and a pencil, offering it to them. It was a gesture of encouragement, a way to show that someone believed in their potential. The twins looked at it, hesitated, and then accepted it carefully, as if it were a treasure. As the morning passed, the cafe and its surroundings filled with more people. Some came intentionally to hear the music, drawn by whispers and the sight of the twins playing. Others stumbled upon it by chance, stopping to listen and marvel at the unlikely musicians. The laughter that had greeted them before was gone, replaced by quiet admiration and a growing sense of respect. The twins did not seek this recognition, but they felt it nonetheless, and it gave them a quiet strength. They played for hours, the small piece of bread they had shared earlier forgotten for a moment, replaced by the energy of the music and the attention of those who had stopped to listen. Their fingers grew tired, but they did not give up. They took breaks, small sips of water from a fountain, soft whispers to each other, and then returned to the piano, letting the notes flow again. Each time they played, they improved, learning from the mistakes, adjusting the rhythm, and feeling more connected to the instrument. By midday, the cafe had become a small gathering place, a place where the twins' music was the center of attention. People who had walked past without noticing now paused, enchanted by the raw talent and emotion on display. Some took photos, some simply watched in silence, and others offered words of encouragement. It was a strange kind of magic, the way music could transform the world around them, even if only for a few hours. The twins took turns speaking softly to the crowd, explaining that they were learning, that they had never had lessons, that they only wanted to share something beautiful and maybe earn a little food in return. The honesty in their voices touched people in a way that nothing else could. No one mocked them, no one scowled. Instead, there was understanding, empathy, and a growing admiration for their courage. The older musician returned, this time approaching them directly. He knelt down to their level and spoke quietly but warmly. He asked them about their dreams, about how long they had been playing, and offered a few gentle tips to improve their technique. The twins listened intently, absorbing every word, feeling a spark of possibility ignite within them. It was the first time someone had recognized their potential not as beggars or street children, but as musicians, as artists, as human beings capable of creating something meaningful. By the time the sun was high in the sky, the twins had not only shared their music, but also gained a small but growing network of supporters. Some offered to bring them food daily, some offered to help them learn more about music, and others simply promised to return to listen again. It was a day of small miracles, of kindness, of the realization that courage and talent could break through barriers that had seemed insurmountable. As they finally stepped away from the piano, their bodies tired but their hearts full, the twins felt a sense of hope they had not experienced in years. The city no longer seemed quite so cold, the streets not so lonely. They had taken a risk, faced ridicule, and found something far greater than they had imagined. The music had given them a voice, a presence, a reason to believe that their lives could change. Walking back through the streets, they shared a small meal, laughing softly at the events of the morning. They whispered plans for the next day, for the next song, for the next moment of courage. The piano had become more than an instrument. It had become a symbol of possibility, of connection, and of the power of persistence. They knew the road ahead would still be hard, but they had discovered that even in the most unlikely places, moments of beauty and kindness could appear, and that was enough to keep moving forward, together. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the square, turning the familiar streets into a patchwork of light and dark. The twins returned to the cafe, their hearts racing with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. Today felt different, as if something important was about to happen. They had played before, they had seen the surprise and admiration on people's faces, but there was a new energy in the air, a feeling that the world might be willing to listen more closely this time. They moved carefully through the crowd, carrying with them a small bundle of belongings, nothing more than the essentials for a day on the streets. Their shoes were worn, their clothes patched in several places, but there was a glow in their eyes that had not been there before. They paused near the piano, watching people chatting, sipping coffee, and occasionally glancing their way with curiosity. The twins exchanged a quiet smile, a wordless agreement that they were ready to play again. This time they did not hesitate. They stepped up to the piano, and without a word, they began to play. The first notes were cautious, uncertain, but they quickly found a rhythm, a flow that carried the story of their lives. Each note seemed to carry a memory, a feeling, a hope. People stopped in their tracks, drawn by the music, by the honesty and emotion in the sound. The twins did not notice the crowd growing. They were lost in the music, in the sensation of creating something that had never existed before. As they played, something remarkable began to happen. The laughter that had greeted them before was replaced by silence, and then by soft murmurs of amazement. Children who had been playing nearby paused, adults turned their heads, and even the street vendors momentarily stopped their work to listen. It was as if the music had a power of its own, reaching into the hearts of those who heard it and stirring emotions they had not expected. One man, standing at the edge of the crowd, wiped his eyes discreetly. He was a teacher at a local music school, and he recognized something in the twins that was rare and precious. Talent, yes, but more than that. A depth of feeling that could not be taught, a connection to music that came from life itself, from struggle and survival. He took a careful step forward, observing the twins' technique, noting the way they adjusted their movements instinctively, how they communicated with each other without words. He knew that these children, despite their circumstances, were extraordinary. The twins were not playing for recognition, not even fully aware of the growing audience. They were playing because it made them feel alive, because for a few precious moments, they could forget hunger, cold, and fear. They could simply be children again, expressing themselves through the piano, telling their story in a language that anyone could understand. Their fingers danced across the keys, producing melodies that were simple yet full of emotion, imperfect but beautiful in their honesty. A woman in the crowd, holding a small notebook and pencil, began to sketch the twins as they played. She captured the intensity in their faces, the delicate movement of their hands, the bond between them that was evident in every gesture. She was an artist who often drew people she admired, and the twins inspired her more than she could explain. The sketches would later become a series that celebrated resilience and courage, but in that moment, she simply watched and drew, letting the music guide her hand. The twins, feeling the energy from the crowd, began to experiment more. They tried a few notes together, then a short melody separately, testing the limits of their fingers and the piano's sound. It was playful and serious at the same time, a mixture of learning and expression. Each time they played, they grew more confident, more willing to take risks. They had learned from the mistakes of yesterday and today, adjusting the pressure of their fingers, the rhythm of their movements, the flow of their melody. As the hours passed, the crowd continued to grow. People who had never seen the twins before stopped, captivated by the sound and the story behind it. Some offered coins, some brought small pastries or bottles of water. But beyond material gifts, there was a growing respect and admiration. People began to speak softly to each other about the twins' courage, their dedication, the unexpected beauty they brought to the square. It was a small miracle, the way two children, often ignored by the world, could command attention and inspire genuine emotion through music. A man approached the twins quietly, kneeling to be at their level. He introduced himself as a local music instructor and asked if he could give them a few lessons. The twins listened, eyes wide, hearts pounding. They had never imagined anyone would offer them such an opportunity. It was a chance not only to improve their skills, but to see a world beyond the streets, a world where they could belong and grow. They nodded quietly, too stunned to speak, but the hope that ignited within them was unmistakable. The music shifted as they played a slower, more reflective piece. It carried memories of cold nights on the street, empty stomachs, and long walks through a city that often ignored them. But within it was also hope, the bond between the twins, and the courage they had found to play in front of strangers. People listened, some wiping tears from their eyes, some simply standing in silence, feeling the story unfold through the simple notes of the piano. The twins had managed to communicate more with their music than words ever could. A small group of children approached hesitantly, drawn by the sound. The twins smiled softly at them, gesturing for them to sit nearby. The children watched quietly, fascinated, and a few even tried pressing a key or two under the twins' guidance. It became a moment of shared joy, a small bridge between lives, between experience and curiosity. For a brief time, the street felt warmer, friendlier, filled with laughter, curiosity, and the sound of music that had come from the heart. The twins continued to play until the sun began to dip lower in the sky, casting long golden rays across the square. Their fingers ached, their backs were sore from standing, but they did not stop until the music naturally came to a gentle conclusion. The crowd, now large and attentive, erupted into soft applause and murmurs of admiration. The twins stood quietly, humbled by the response, their hearts swelling with pride and gratitude. They had shared something meaningful, something that belonged to them and to no one else. As the crowd began to disperse, the older music teacher returned and knelt beside them. He spoke kindly, praising their talent, encouraging them to keep playing, to practice, and to believe in themselves. He promised to return with materials, to help them learn, to guide them in ways that would turn their raw talent into something extraordinary. The twins listened, taking in every word, feeling the weight of possibility settle over them. Walking back through the streets after their performance, the twins felt a deep sense of fulfillment. Today had been different. Today, they had not only shared their music but also touched hearts, created moments of connection, and found people willing to help them grow. The memory of the laughter that had greeted them at first felt distant, replaced by something stronger, more lasting. They were beginning to understand that courage, honesty, and talent could change how the world saw them. They shared a quiet meal, speaking softly about the next day, about new melodies, about lessons they would receive. They felt a sense of hope, fragile but real, and a determination to continue. The piano had become more than an instrument. It was a doorway, a lifeline, a symbol of what was possible when one dared to try. And as they moved through the streets toward the small shelter they called home for the night, they knew that their journey was just beginning, that their music could carry them further than they had ever imagined, if only they had the courage to keep playing. The next morning, the twins woke to the faint light of dawn filtering through the cracks of the shelter where they spent the night. Their bodies were tired from the day before, but their spirits were alive, filled with anticipation and hope. The memory of the previous afternoon lingered in their minds. The music, the applause, the kind words of the teacher who had seen their potential. Today they decided they would play again, not just for food, but for the joy of sharing their music and maybe to take the first steps towards something bigger. They left the shelter quietly, careful not to wake the few others who slept there. The streets were calmer than usual, the early morning fog softening the edges of the city. As they walked toward the cafe, they whispered plans to each other, talking about the melodies they wanted to try, the notes they wanted to explore, and the emotions they wanted to convey. Even in the midst of struggle, their minds were full of ideas, full of imagination, and full of dreams. When they reached the square, they saw that a few people were already beginning to gather, perhaps noticing the familiar sight of the small pair heading toward the piano. Some smiled, recognizing them from the day before. Others were curious, having heard whispers about the children who could play music despite their hardships. The twins felt a flutter of nervousness, but it was mixed with excitement. They had already experienced laughter and doubt, but they had also felt the power of music to change the way people looked at them. They took a deep breath and approached the piano. They began to play, fingers moving carefully across the keys, producing a melody that was gentle at first, then more confident. Each note carried a story, a reflection of their experiences, their struggles, and their hopes. People stopped to listen, some quietly, others with eyes wide in surprise. The music seemed to draw everyone in, creating a shared space where differences and judgments fell away, replaced by attention and appreciation. As the twins played, they noticed familiar faces in the crowd. The woman with the sketchbook, the older music teacher, and a few of the children who had watched them before. Each presence reminded them that their music was not just sound. It was connection. It was the way they could communicate without words, how they could touch hearts, and how their story could unfold through melody. The piano was no longer just an object of fascination. It was a bridge to the world, a way for them to be seen, to be valued, and to belong. The older music teacher approached, kneeling to speak to them quietly. He praised their courage and suggested a few small changes to improve their technique. The twins listened carefully, absorbing every word. They tried the suggestions, adjusting their fingers, altering the rhythm, and experimenting with dynamics. The music shifted slightly, becoming richer, fuller, more expressive. The teacher smiled, recognizing that they had an innate understanding of musical expression that went beyond simple technique. They were learning not just notes but how to communicate through sound, how to tell a story without words. A small boy from the crowd stepped forward timidly, carrying a small coin. He offered it to the twins, who accepted it with gratitude, their eyes lighting up with appreciation. It was not the amount that mattered, but the gesture, the recognition that their efforts had meaning. Slowly, more people began to offer small gifts, bread, fruit, coins, even notes of encouragement. The twins smiled shyly, feeling a warmth that went beyond hunger, a warmth that came from being noticed, from being valued, and from being treated with kindness. As the morning turned into afternoon, the twins' confidence grew. They experimented with new melodies, sometimes playing together, sometimes taking turns. Each piece reflected a different aspect of their lives: the quiet moments of solitude, the fear and uncertainty of survival, the small joys they found in friendship and laughter. The music became a dialogue between them and the crowd, a way to share experiences and emotions that words could not fully capture. People leaned in closer, moved by the raw honesty and depth of feeling. The woman with the sketchbook moved among the crowd, capturing the twins in her drawings. Each sketch was an attempt to freeze the fleeting moments of beauty and courage she witnessed, to preserve the expressions on their faces, the motion of their hands, and the connection between them. She felt honored to witness their story, knowing that these images, combined with the music, could inspire others and remind them of the resilience of the human spirit. As the day progressed, the twins were approached by a local journalist who had heard of their story. The journalist wanted to write an article, to share with the world the courage and talent of these children who had dared to play in the streets. The twins were shy at first, unsure of what to say, but they eventually allowed themselves to be interviewed. They spoke simply, honestly, and with a quiet dignity that impressed the journalist. Their words, combined with the story of their music, painted a picture of resilience, hope, and the transformative power of courage. By late afternoon, the square had become a place of community, brought together by the twins' music. Strangers had become listeners, observers had become participants, and the boundaries between the world of the street and the world of the cafe had blurred. The twins had not only played music, they had created a moment of unity, a shared experience that left a lasting impression on everyone present. Their performance was no longer just about survival. It had become a statement of presence, talent, and humanity. The music teacher returned again, offering more guidance, more encouragement, and an invitation to the twins to visit his studio. He promised to help them develop their skills, to give them the tools to explore their potential fully. The twins listened in awe, feeling a mixture of disbelief and hope. The idea that someone believed in them, truly believed in their ability to grow and succeed, was almost overwhelming. They accepted eagerly, knowing this could be the beginning of something life-changing. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the city, the twins finally stepped away from the piano. Their fingers were tired, their backs sore, but their hearts were full. They had shared their music, connected with people, and taken the first steps toward a future that seemed brighter than anything they had imagined. The crowd lingered, offering applause, kind words, and gifts, a testament to the impact the twins had made through their courage and talent. Walking back to their shelter, the twins shared a quiet meal, discussing the day, the music, and the possibilities ahead. They felt a deep sense of accomplishment, a pride that came not from recognition or reward, but from knowing they had shared something meaningful and true. The piano had become a symbol of hope, a reminder that even in the most difficult circumstances, talent, courage, and perseverance could create change. That night, as they lay down to rest, the twins spoke softly about their dreams, about the songs they wanted to learn, and about the people who had believed in them. They knew the road ahead would still be filled with challenges, hunger, and struggle, but they had discovered that music could be a source of strength, connection, and opportunity. And with each other, with their bond unbroken, they felt ready to face whatever came next, confident that their courage and their music could continue to open doors, touch hearts, and change lives. The morning was quiet, the city slowly waking up, but for the twins, it was a morning full of possibility. They had spent the previous days playing in the square, sharing music, and finding encouragement from strangers and supporters. Today, they felt a sense of excitement unlike any before. The piano awaited them, not just as an instrument, but as a bridge to a world that seemed larger and brighter than their narrow life on the streets. They held each other's hands tightly, walking toward the cafe with a mixture of anticipation and determination. When they arrived, the square was already stirring with life. Some people had come to see them again, others were curious newcomers. The twins felt a rush of nervousness but also a strong resolve. They knew what they were capable of, and they were ready to show it once more. Without speaking, they stepped to the piano and began to play. The first notes were soft, tentative, but as they settled into the music, their confidence grew. Their fingers moved with more certainty, creating melodies that were richer, fuller, and more expressive than ever before. People gathered quietly, drawn by the music. The laughter that had once followed them was now absent, replaced by awe and appreciation. Children stood near the edges of the crowd, mesmerized, while adults leaned forward, captivated by the depth of feeling in every note. The twins were no longer just street children playing for food. They had become storytellers, sharing their experiences, dreams, and emotions through the piano. The music communicated what words could not, bridging the gap between their lives and the world around them. The older music teacher had arrived early, carrying notebooks, sheet music, and a few instruments he wanted to introduce to the twins. He knelt beside them as they played, offering gentle guidance and encouragement. He praised their technique, their expression, and their courage. Each suggestion he made was absorbed eagerly, and the twins applied them immediately, refining their melodies, exploring harmonies, and experimenting with rhythm. Their growth over just a few days amazed even him. It was clear that with guidance and support, they had the potential to achieve something extraordinary. The crowd grew larger as the morning turned into afternoon. News of the twins' talent had spread, and more people came to witness their performance. Some brought small gifts, bread, fruit, coins, But many came simply to listen, to feel the music and to be part of the unique moment that the twins were creating. Their performance had become more than a request for survival. It had become an experience that touched everyone present, a demonstration of resilience, courage, and the power of art to connect people. The twins began to play a new piece, one they had composed together. It was slower, reflective, filled with memories of cold nights, hunger, and fear, but also with hope, love, and the bond they shared. Each note carried emotion, each pause held meaning. The crowd listened in silence, some moved to tears, others simply absorbed the atmosphere, feeling the story unfold through the music. For the twins, it was a moment of freedom, a moment where the world seemed to acknowledge their humanity, their talent, and their right to be seen. As the performance continued, a journalist arrived, eager to share their story with a wider audience. The twins were shy, hesitant to speak at first, but they eventually allowed themselves to be interviewed. Their words were simple, honest, and full of dignity. They spoke about their love for music, their dreams, and the joy of sharing melodies with people who listened. The journalist was struck by their maturity, their honesty, and the way their story could inspire others. The article, when published, would reach many and spread a message of hope, courage, and the unexpected beauty found in resilience. During a brief pause in their performance, the twins were approached by a local woman who worked with children in need. She offered them a chance to attend a small music program where they could learn in a safe environment, have regular meals, and continue to develop their skills. The twins listened with wide eyes, absorbing every detail, and accepted the offer. It was a moment of life-changing opportunity, one that seemed almost impossible only a few days before. They had taken a risk, dared to play, and now their courage had opened doors they never imagined. The afternoon faded into evening, and the twins continued to play, their music flowing freely, blending memories, dreams, and emotions into a tapestry that captivated everyone present. People applauded, smiled, and sometimes wiped tears, recognizing the extraordinary journey these children had undertaken. The twins had transformed not just their own lives but also the lives of those who witnessed their music. In their small, delicate hands, the piano became a tool of hope, a beacon of perseverance, and a reminder that beauty and courage could exist even in the harshest circumstances. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting golden hues across the square, the twins finally stepped away from the piano. Their fingers ached, their bodies were tired, but their hearts were full. They had shared more than music. They had shared their story, their resilience, and their humanity. The crowd dispersed slowly, some staying to offer words of encouragement, others promising to return. The twins accepted the small gifts and smiles with quiet gratitude, understanding that their lives were beginning to change. Walking back to their shelter, the twins talked softly about the day, the people they had met, and the opportunities that lay ahead. They felt a sense of pride, not just in their talent, but in their courage to try, to step forward despite fear, and to believe in themselves. The piano had become more than an instrument. It was a symbol of hope, a testament to perseverance, and a reminder that even the smallest voices could be heard when backed by courage and determination. That night, as they lay down to rest, the twins reflected on everything that had happened. They had faced laughter and doubt, had shared their music, touched hearts, and been offered opportunities that promised a brighter future. They knew the journey ahead would still be challenging, but they were no longer alone in their struggles. They had found mentors, supporters, and a community that believed in them. Most importantly, they had found a renewed belief in themselves and their ability to shape their own destiny. The twins drifted to sleep with thoughts of music, dreams of playing in new places, and plans to continue learning and growing. The piano had given them a voice, the crowd had given them encouragement, and the world had given them a glimpse of possibility. In the quiet of the night, they held hands, knowing that together they could face anything, that their bond and their courage would carry them forward. And in that moment, the story of the twins, their struggles, their music, and their hope, became a testament to the power of human spirit and the extraordinary potential that exists in even the most unlikely places.